You ended up kind of getting a tour bus to prioritize your daughter and your relationships that you guys can all be together.
Baby on the airplane, baby on the bus, baby everywhere. In the arenas, baby was with us wherever we went.
Your CrossFit, how has bodybuilding came into play with that?
I put a lot of miles on this thing over the last 20 years in my industry to be able to feel good after training, be able to play with this little savage that's running around here. That's important.
Your CrossFit, like people know that you train different than just bodybuilding. Like what does fitness do for you?
Working out with people, competing in the same workout at the same time, and just that like common bond you experience. It applied so much to wrestling, very similar, right? Like you're working against each other in CrossFit, like if you're kind of racing, but you're not.
All right. Colby or Seth Rollins, you and I, we were talking the other day. You're like, hey man, can we move the podcast a little bit? Because I got a last minute invite, or I got invited to the Moana 2 world premiere. And Moana 1 was legit. And I know that you have a daughter, and I'm sure, has she seen Moana 1?
Oh, of course. Many, many times. It was on replay in our house for a long time.
Right. And like my daughter loved Moana. I actually liked it. I thought The Rock crushed it. I thought the whole thing was great. So tell me, what is it like going to a world premiere in Hawaii, out of all places, for Moana 2? And did you bring your daughter? Did you guys go as a family?
Yeah, she was the primary mover, right? She was the reason. Literally short notice, like less than 24 hours. Hey, can you get on a plane and come to Hawaii to check this thing out? And we were like, well, if we didn't have a 4-year-old daughter who loved Moana, and she's 4 now, so she's kind of like starting to like formulate almost four in a couple weeks. So it's like starting to formulate kind of memories and things that'll last for a while. And so we were like, we should probably give this one a go. If it was any other movie, we might not have done it, but this one was big. And the premiere was beautiful. I said it a million times when we were down there. It was like unreal. Like whoever designed it should have been like given a raise immediately, because it was like it was outdoors. So it was like a drive-in theater type style, it was like on a screen, and it was on this lawn, like right outside the Disney resort in Honolulu, Aulani Resort, which is a beautiful resort. And it was stunning, like sunset going down. They had a bunch of activities all around, pre-premiere for the kids and stuff like that. So, you get to get little Maui like tattoos and make little flower bracelets and do all that kind of stuff. And it was beautiful. And obviously they had drinks and food and stuff like that. But it was just, you could not have set this thing up any better. And then the movie's wonderful. No spoilers, but it's wonderful. I loved the first one. I loved the second one. It was a win all around.
One thing you said that was super interesting, and I'm curious. We have a 2-year-old boy and a 8-month-old daughter. What made you realize that your daughter's starting to kind of like have some memories that you said that are now going to last for a long time? Like how did you make that distinction?
Honestly, you just start to see their memory bank fill up, right? So they start to remember things from further away, right? And then you start to remember your own life and when your first memories come into play. And it's right around that age, right around like 4 years old. Because I remember preschool, like, I have flashes and images, but I remember my teacher. I remember like the playground. I remember certain little things about it. And that's without, miles and miles of photographic and video evidence to kind of like jog my memory. So I can only imagine that at her age, she's starting to just process things differently, really starting to kind of grow into her own person. And these little core memories and experiences are going to be things that she's going to keep with her. Even if this one's not forever, ever, it's going to be longer down the line. She's going to remember it for some years as opposed to, 2 days.
Yeah.
I'm so glad you brought this up. I'm glad we started the podcast this way, talking about your daughter, because you and Becky, I'll use her kind of a WWE name. You guys have, to me, like the coolest, most unique relationship out of anybody I know, right? You guys seem like super on lock. You both are like on point. You both are in the same professions. You understand what it takes to be at the highest level. And then you have, this wonderful daughter who gets to go and like on this journey with you. And so I'd love to start there, man, because correct me if I'm wrong, but you guys have pivoted from when you and I first met years and years ago. the first time we met, I'll never forget. I think if I'm not mistaken, you were carrying, you have an old school NorCal shirt on. First time I met you, I think you were carrying the green Money in the Bank, or was it green or gold?
It was
Gold briefcase. And the first time I remember talking to you about this is that you would be on airplanes like basically every week, traveling around the country doing WWE events, and you would carry this gold briefcase on the airplane with you. And it just stands out in my mind. It's like, I can only imagine seeing you walking through the airport as Seth Rollins, like the champ, just carrying this Money in the Bank. That was what it was called, right? Money in the Bank.
That's right.
And then you turned it in at one point. But back to the family, you ended up kind of getting a tour bus to prioritize your daughter and your relationships, that you guys can all be together. And I'd love to dive into that a little bit more. Like, how was that conversation with Becky? How is that, being on the road so much and the experiences for your daughter, and then being able to now do it as a family on a tour bus? Like, I don't know, talk to me more about that, because it's such a unique experience that other people don't have.
Yeah, I mean, so when I first met you, this would have been 2013, maybe something like that ish, 2014. I'd say 14, 15, somewhere in there, let's say. When I first got into WWE, I was in 2 years. Having a bus at the time was like a status symbol, right? Because it's expensive. It is expensive. And so if you were a top earner, you could afford to travel that way. And it was for longevity purposes. I mean, it's night and day. Just for your listeners to understand, most of our talent, when we do these live events, which are the non-televised events on the weekends, and then Monday Night Raw on Monday, or Friday Night SmackDown on Friday, the talent has to rent their own cars and get their own hotel rooms. So after each show, you're driving sometimes 3, 4, 5 hours at 2 a.m. To get to your hotel, or you're waking up the next morning and driving early to get to the next town. So having a tour bus, makes that exponentially better. And it's not like, we have a production company that provides the tour buses. Like, we have to go out and source that on our own as talent, because we're independent contractors. So that's on us to do. So fast forward to 2019, Becky and I are both doing really well. Obviously, we've got 2 WWE high level incomes, and it makes sense to get a bus. So we grabbed the bus in late 2019. Obviously, early 2020, as we all know, all hell breaks loose, and the tour bus did not really get much use for the next year and a half, as far as driving up and down the roads. Now, WWE was still doing shows out in Florida, but around that time, as soon as COVID hit, within 2 weeks, we had kind of made the decision to try to have a baby. And so, we looked at the forecast. There wasn't going to be a whole lot of time in our schedules in the future if things went back to normal to be able to settle down and take a year off the road. But now with COVID, it allowed us that opportunity. And Becky really did not like the idea of wrestling in front of nobody in an empty warehouse, which is what most of us were doing during COVID in WWE. And so the timing kind of worked out. And then having the bus when we came back to the road, which Becky came back from having Rue like lightning quick, like it was insane. So she had her in December, and then she was back on the road in July, and we were full on baby on the airplane, baby on the bus, baby everywhere in the arenas. Baby was with us wherever we went, and we were very fortunate to have that bus set up. We have a great setup with our driver. His wife actually came on board as our nanny, so she was very helpful. So it was really like just a family vibe on that bus, man. We were watching Moana left and right in that thing. So it was really an incredible experience. We were so lucky to be able to have it and to be able to take her with us everywhere and experience kind of her infancy, even if it was a little different, right, than most people who do it all in one place. We at least didn't have to leave her. And a lot of the guys in the past, guys and girls who would have kids, like, for women, it was like, that's it, career over. And 2, for men, we'd have to spend weeks away from our kids, and we would miss so many things. So for us to be able to have this opportunity to take her with us, she's not going to remember any of that stuff. Obviously, there'll be pictures and videos and stuff. She's not going to remember any of it. But for us to be able to have her the whole time and be with her every night and every day, even, when we were going back and forth in and out of the arenas and stuff. Like, it was really an awesome thing for us as parents to be able to cultivate that relationship and not have to, A, for Becky, just hang up the boots, and B, for me, not to miss anything. We got to be there for all of it.
Man, I so grateful every day working from home, obviously different, but similar in that just like the flexibility that my current setup gives me to constantly be with the kids and just be able to even jump in if something happens and go help out. I think a lot of, I guess, what would your suggestion be looking back on how positive that was for you and your family? A lot of people listening might just feel like they're kind of like trapped by their circumstances to not be able to do that. Any advice on just like the importance of it, or finding ways to like at least get some of that given your situation? Because I do think that it is one of those things where you're never going to think back and regret the time that you spent all together making it work, but you might potentially regret, making the decision of like, well, work's important, all this travel for work's important right now, so on and so forth. And then you look back on it, you can't get those years back.
Yeah, I mean, look, everybody's, like you said, everybody's situation is going to be different. I want to point out too, we are so fortunate to be able to live the life we live. Like, we are so fortunate, and I don't take that for granted any step of the way. Me and Becky talk about it all the time, just how lucky we are. So everybody's circumstances are going to be different, and everybody's parenting is going to look different. Right. And you can't, I try so hard not to like pass any judgment off on any other parents, because I'm like, dude, everybody's just doing the best they can for the most part. You know what I mean? Everybody's just trying. Everybody's just trying to make ends meet, put food on the table, make sure their kids are going to good schools and taken care of, while they're at school, and being around as a parent, whether kids are infants, and getting the right food and playing enough. And, you hear all this noise on the outside about how you're supposed to do it. So to me, what I've learned as a dad and as a parent that maybe I didn't understand before was that if you just love your kids like crazy, you're gonna figure it out. If you just approach everything with how much love you have for this little tiny thing that you're able to bring into the world and grow, like, you're gonna figure the rest out. And even if it doesn't look perfect and it doesn't look how it's supposed to look, in these books or on these shows or whatever, like, your kid they're not gonna like think about that stuff. They're just gonna feel loved, and that's gonna help them grow as human beings. And the rest of it's just gonna kind of fall into place. And so we were very lucky to have the time, but we had the time too because we wanted to have the time. We really put effort into making sure that even if the travel was tough, we'd figure out how to make it work for our daughter in the best possible way. From her sleep schedules, we would adjust whatever flights we had to make sure that, she wasn't moving around too much through these time zones and stuff like that. If we needed to, get somebody somewhere to help us out, we would always try to get that done. And again, these are opportunities that we're afforded that not everybody has. But I think if you approach it from love, even if it doesn't feel like it's the best thing in the moment, it's going to work itself out, and you're doing the right thing because you're prioritizing something else ahead of yourself, which is, that's love. You know what I mean? That's true parenthood more than anything.
I want to kind of pull on that, just a little bit more with Becky, right? The fact that you guys are both in the same profession. How has that been for you guys? Because you've been on the road traveling, you've been grinding, and I want to get in like how you got to where you're at today, because I think sometimes people look at people that are successful and they think like, oh, Seth Rollins, it's like, no, dude, you didn't see all the years, all the sacrifice you've put in, all the travel, all the things. And I'm sure Becky's gone through that exact same evolution. I'm sure. How have you guys as a couple, like, what do you guys do? What are some tangible things that you guys think about? Is there communication structure you guys come up with? Is there anything going on? Because you guys work and you guys obviously live basically together on a tour bus. Like, that's a lot going on, right?
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot. So what's something there with your guys' relationship that maybe we could dive into, just in terms of like something that you guys prioritize to help you guys out?
I think just conversation, I think that's one of the, and I know that sounds so simple, but I think just being able to talk to each other, you know what I'm saying? If you have that communication, even if you have disagreements, as long as you can effectively communicate with each other, you're going to be able to kind of work through most things. And we do spend a lot of time together, especially,
Right.
I mean, more than most couples, because most couples don't work together. So I find that, you know, people with regular non-wrestling jobs, they end up, you know, not seeing each other most of the week, right? They get the time at night, but it's like getting dinner, getting the baby to bed, or the kids, you know, set for the next day, whatever. And then you're like, I need me time too. You know, if you got to go to the gym or you got to do errands or whatever it is you're doing. So we spend a ton of time together because we're at work all the time, doing the same job. And, you know, we're at home at the same times pretty much. You know, obviously there's some like disparity, but I mean, we spend a lot of time together. And honestly, and I don't mean to brag, but we don't fight about hardly anything.
Because you guys probably get ahead of it, right? You get ahead of it with the community.
Yeah, it's the communication. Yeah, we just try to stay in communication. And we also we try to make sure that at night, when we do have that non-work, non-baby time, there's like our time, which even if that's just a half hour to sit and like have a conversation about how was your day or what did you, because, you know, even though we're working together, we're kind of like working adjacent as opposed to like working in unison, right? So like we're doing different things or whatever. And so it's just like, checking in. How are you? You know, how was your day? How are you feeling like about everything? Like, how's life? Like, and even if that conversation, like I said, is 15 to 30 minutes, that's like a kind of an emotional intimacy that I think keeps us on the same page. And we know where each other's at the end of the day and then heading into the next day. And just kind of keeping up with each other in that way and making time for the relationship, even as, you know, like I said, the emotional intimacy, even like on a friendship level, right? Just being friends with each other and caring about what each other is doing throughout the day. Even if it's like the small stuff, just having the time to sit down and talk about it, and then be there and being good listeners and trying not to just look at it from one perspective. So yeah, I mean, I think communication is key, no matter what your differences are, because, you know, as people, you just grow, right? You grow over the years. You're not the same people that you were when you first started dating. I mean, Jason, you and your wife have been together forever, right? So there's zero chance that you guys are the same people you were when you first started dating. Of course you're going to grow, but if you communicate with each other, you'll find that you can grow together a lot better than if you don't. I mean, I think that you stop communicating, stop talking to each other, I mean, everything gets turned into chaos.
Mm.
And it's so easy, right? It's so easy to get so wrapped up, specifically when you become parents. Like, you hear about it all the time. The focus becomes the kids and the kids alone. And me and Jay have talked about this a lot. Like, Jay brings up all the time, you know, when Ava got sick and the advice that you got, like, that to me is always such a vivid example of like, you would 100% understand your focus now turning to Ava and Ava alone, but the advice you got from the nurse, I don't want to, you know, say the story for you, but of keeping your date nights, like, that to me is always such an important example of, even in the times where it would be complete, like, no one would bat an eye of you saying, right now my sole focus is my daughter. The fact that some of the best advice you got was, yes, but also your wife, your relationship with her, because you're a team that's going to have to get through this together. And I think that that's so important, specifically for young parents out there, to realize that, yes, the kids are important, but for the kids to get everything they need, they're going to need the best team possible. And for the team to be on the same page, you guys have to prioritize your own time. So I love that, man.
Yeah. I mean, look, just those kids are going to get the time, dog. They're going to, whether you want to get to them or not, they're going to get
right.
it, man. I mean, they're going to come for
There's
it.
no way they don't get the time.
Yeah, they're getting the time. You know what I'm saying? That's trust me. If you're not a parent yet, and you a prospective parent or whatever, or if you are a parent, you know they're getting that time, whether you like it or not. So yeah, prioritize that stuff with your partner, man. It's a big deal, and it really helps. It helps your parenting game too, I find.
Dude, that's I haven't heard it referred to as that. That makes total sense. Like, hey, bro, they're gonna get your time. Like, you're right. They're gonna get your time. Like,
have you ever tried ignoring a toddler?
Yeah, what do you do? It's not gonna happen.
Dude, it's so funny because I haven't been around, you know, young kids for a long time. You know, my kids are 13 and 10, and I was around Gabe's son, who's 2, and it's like, bro, it's like, man, just like all the time, like, dude. And it's just like boom, 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 boom. And I haven't experienced that in a long time. And you you kind of have a tendency to forget. And then you're around, you're like, oh, I was like, this is what it feels like. And so they're going to get your time, whether you like it or not. They're going to get your time. I want to ask Seth about like kind of what you did for the sport of wrestling and what role fitness plays in this. So, one of the ways that we connected obviously early on was through CrossFit, and you compete in the open. You're very, you're pretty, you're CrossFit. Like, people know that you train different than just bodybuilding. Now you do some bodybuilding and whatnot now and whatnot. And I'm sure that's evolved the last 10 years. But I guess the reason why I bring this up is like, what role does fitness play? Because I know Becky, she's in great shape too. And what role does fitness play in terms of your guys' like kind of the way you look at it, like holistically between the two of you guys, like as a couple, and then for you in particular, like what does fitness do for you?
Yeah, so I'll start as like with the couple thing, because it reminded me of a kind of a little story from the other day. We recently had made some friends with some neighborhood parents, and they were talking about like I don't know, my wife and the other mother, they were talking about the gym and exercise and stuff like that. And Becky had mentioned something about like, oh, us going to the gym together, and like the other wife was like. Like blew her mind that we would go to the gym together. She's like, wait, you guys go? Oh, that's so cute that you guys go to the gym at the same time. And like, I hadn't really ever thought of it that way. It's just something that we've always done together. Like, we've always just trained together. That's just part of our thing. Like, we figure out a time to, sometimes the kid comes with us and parties too, but like, we figure out a time where, oh, she's at school or she's, with a sitter or whatever she's doing, with grandma, and we can go get our workout in. Like, that's just always been a priority for us for many, many, many years, even before we met and before we got into wrestling. But that's because fitness is like a massive part of what we do in our industry. For me, it's always been it started out as like I have to get in shape, right? Because wrestlers are in shape. So when I was a kid and I'm looking at, I want to do this thing, what are the things that these wrestlers do? Oh, okay. Well, they look a certain way. Obviously, that's the first thing you figure out. So I was like, okay, I got to look like I'm in good shape. But then as the business, so I started working out, and then obviously developed a kind of a love relationship with it, like where I just like it became sort of therapeutic to go to the gym. In like an addiction, maybe, in some ways, to get that kind of feeling and feel like you accomplished something for the day physically. And like the deeper I got into that feeling, like the harder I pushed, because the more you kind of do it, then you reach that like level where you're like, oh, I got to push further. Oh, I got to push further. Oh, I got to push further to get that same kind of high that you would get from going to the gym. And that's sort of where I fell into CrossFit, where I just felt like I had plateaued with my regular fitness program. And I was like, I got to do something different. I got to change this up, man. I was already kind of like basically like supersetting everything at the gym anyway, just to like get a sweat and some cardio in, and then like sort of fell into CrossFit. And I had asked a friend about what he was doing for conditioning. And he brought me to a CrossFit gym, and this was in like 2010, I want to say. And I was like, dang, this is insane. Like, I just did a simple, like little Cindy. So like a little, like, pull up, push up, pull up, push up, squat workout with a run. And like, I just didn't understand. I didn't understand anything what was happening to me. I did the first run. I remember like I ran 400. I came back. I did like one set of Cindy, and then I went out for my second run, and everything just stopped.
You started
like
walking
halfway through the Yeah. I started walking because I was like, well, all my muscles were tense, dude. I didn't know how to breathe. I didn't understand anything about like what oxygen was doing in my body to my muscles, like the blood flow, anything like that. I had no clue about what was going on. I came back and I was like, oh yeah, we're in. This is it. Let's do this from now on. And then I just practiced CrossFit for like the next what is it, 15 years now or something like that? 10, 15 years, somewhere in there. And I fell in love with it. I fell in love with the sport of it, the competition, the community of it. Obviously you just don't really get those things at like with headphones in at a gym, just kind of getting the pump. So like the community aspect of working out with people, competing in the same workout at the same time, and just that like common bond you experience. And applied so much to wrestling because wrestling is very similar, right? Like you're working against each other in CrossFit, like if you're kind of racing, but you're not. You're sort of at the end of the day when the bell rings or when the buzzer sounds, like you're together. You know what I mean? You're in it together. And so there's this kind of like cool synergy in that competition, not competition type vibe with professional wrestling and CrossFit. And so I found it exhilarating to train that way. It helped my cardio like go through the roof. The business was also transitioning. My business was also transitioning out of like giant, just plodding monsters into a much faster sort of pace. And I'm 6'2", about 6'2", like 220. So like I'm a bigger guy for like regular size folks, but like in wrestling, I'm kind of like middle of the road size. Like I'm not a giant, you know? So I was like, this can be my wheelhouse. If I can be a bigger, like a medium sized guy, not a small guy. I'm not like a Rey Mysterio. Like I'm not diminutive, but like if I can be kind of like all go at my size, I'll be able to really kind of go with the shifting landscape of our industry. And it sort of goes along with, I don't know, like the attention span of the generation now where everything's shorter, everything's faster. They kind of don't have the patience for like things to be drawn out as long unless you really put the effort into making something special. So it all sort of kind of crescendoed at the right time for me. And fitness was a huge part of that. But with moving at that pace, I had to be able to keep up. You can't look like you're dead tired when you're out there. You got to be able to push. So it really all worked out well for me. It also helped my joints, helped my mobility. Even now when I'm kind of doing less CrossFit as I've gotten older, I still have mobility from doing years of that I didn't have even in my early 20s, that I have now in my almost 40s that I just wouldn't have had I not overhead squatted for 15 years,
Seth, why do you think there isn't like a more significant uptick in the CrossFit training methodology specifically and like high level professional athletes? Like you're a high level professional athlete. Tyson Baggett, or Bagent, he's been making some headlines lately. Quarterback for the Bears, the Chicago Bears. He's a CrossFit athlete. But aside from that, like you haven't really heard, is it just that we're not hearing that that's the type of training they're doing, but you don't hear NBA players, MLB players, more football players that are doing the methodology CrossFit for the sport? What do you think's behind that? Or is it just that that's what they're doing and we don't hear about it?
I mean, the thing is they just work with athletic trainers. When you work at a high level, they just doing what's told to them. And a lot of that, like, a lot of it is in a CrossFit style without the name CrossFit. When I've done like kind of like little workouts with these athletes, NBA is a little different. Their body types are wild. Like they're not built for CrossFit training. They're like aliens. You know what I mean? They're not built for their bodies just ain't. And the sport ain't. You see some of them getting muscular, but I mean that game has evolved in a wild way. So I don't even want to get into that too much. But you look at like especially power athletes like football and stuff like that. They always have trained in a way that's very similar to CrossFit, right? They've done it in shorter spurts. So they train specifically, like sport specific. And so even the bigger guys, like I trained with Lane Johnson, who is a tackle for the Philadelphia Eagles. And this dude's a giant. He's a giant. So he trains like specifically for being an offensive tackle, nothing else. Like, what does he need to do? He needs to be able to push hard and fast, and he needs to be able to squat like quickly and then move like his feet with agility. And that's like it. So I think that's all his training, but he does it in such a way that he's still getting, because he doesn't want to go walk on a treadmill. Like he doesn't want to go do cardio for 45 minutes or whatever. So he still does it in a way where he's getting that kind of cardiovascular stimulus while getting the kind of like muscular response that he's looking for. So I find that a lot of power athletes, while not doing like CrossFit per se, like they're probably not doing, say, Chad or whatever, right? They're not doing like 1,000 box step ups for time. They're not doing hero wads and stuff like that. But like the sort of less is more, or least or most in the least amount of time, shall I say, mindset that CrossFit sort of has adopted is really always sort of been there. They just don't brand it that way, I guess.
Got it. No, that makes a lot of sense.
Seth, I don't know how much you could dive into this, but I'd love to hear your feedback on. So again, when I went to WrestleMania, and I had never been to, I went to WrestleMania at Levi Stadium, and I remember that I watched the ladder match, and it was the craziest thing I've ever seen, I think, in my life.
Yep.
You got me great tickets. I'm sitting right on the stage or whatever, right on the side. And these guys are climbing ladders and hitting each other. And it is just so aggressive. But obviously there's one of the things I don't know what you're allowed to talk about or not, is how that flow works. I'd love for you to share just a little bit about how athletic these WWE superstars are, because you're out there training, you're doing flips, you're doing this, you're doing that. But dude, you guys are actually falling. You guys are actually going through this. And and the fact that you told me a long time ago, there might be some idea of who's going to do well and who isn't, but that you guys just go out and choreograph this together. I don't know if we could dive into it. I'd love to hear how that process works, if you're allowed to talk about it, because I just think it's so special what you do for work.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's an art form, no doubt about it. It's very much Cirque du Soleil without the intense repetition. So if you look at a Cirque du Soleil show, you go to a Cirque show and you're like, holy cow, from start to finish, how did this happen? How did they put this together? Who designed these elements? And then of course, the acrobatics, you go, how is this even possible? They've done it through, repetition. They've practiced and practiced and practiced and practiced it. And so that's kind of where we're at, but without all the levels of practice. So we're part Cirque du Soleil, but also part stand-up comedy. So we've got, bits, right, that we can do and go in and out of, where we expect certain responses. But also we have to be able to pivot if those responses aren't exactly what we imagine. And so when you're in the ring, you have to be able to communicate and call things what we call on the fly, just do things, be able to talk to whoever you're in there with and change things up, change the pace of the matchup, get people in different positions, and make sure that you're telling the best story for your audience. Now, the ladder match you mentioned, that's a different animal, right? So if there's 7 guys and a bunch of ladders and crazy stunts, the amount of on the fly going to be very slim, very slim. That match is going to be talked about probably in advance, maybe a day or two, a week or two, and they'll go over pretty much everything they're going to do in sort of an ABCD order. But that's, it's just a safety level is, paramount. You got to make sure that people come out of that not, they're going to get hurt, because yes, we are falling. They are real ladders. Accidents do happen. You get a lot of bumps and bruises, you come out of those ladder matches and your back is just beat to pieces. Your forearms are just jacked up and people throwing ladders at you. And, if you've fallen off the top of a ladder onto a ring, which, rings they got this much padding and then it's just steel and wood underneath it. It's not comfortable. And your body acclimates, sort of over time, but it never feels good. You're never oh, that was an excellent fall from a 10-foot ladder. So yeah, it's this weird art form that we get to sort of do that's totally unique. And I can describe it as if it's pieces of a bunch of different stuff, but that's not doing it justice, because it's really just its own thing. It's a little bit of Shakespeare in the Round. It's a little bit of stand-up comedy. It's a little bit of Cirque du Soleil. It's a little bit of Super Bowl, football. It's a little bit of all these things. And that's what makes it so beautifully unique in its own sort of phenomena. And that's why people love it so much, because whatever you're a fan of, you can find a piece of it in professional wrestling.
What's the average career span of a WWE wrestler, and has that evolved over the years? You had mentioned that now it is more acrobatic, it is more, kind of these stunts. Has that decreased what that looks like average, and how are you holding up?
So actually, it's sort of contradictory to what you would think. The wrestler's timeline is longer these days, but because we've advanced so much in the style and the athleticism, as you know, from being a part of fitness,
Yep.
it, the recovery and the, prehab and rehab has also advanced so much as well. So the fact that we know more about the human body in general has allowed us to stay healthier and to take care of ourselves and to last longer. You look at guys who, for example, The Rock, we'll bring it back to Moana. We talked about it. The Rock's run in WWE was like 5 years. He was only in WWE for like 5 years. That's it, like 97 to 02. He had a little bit after that, but like that was his main run. And I've already been with the company for 13 years. I've been on the main roster for 10 years, 10 or 11 years or something like that now. No, I lied. Back it up. Been on the main roster for 12 years, been with the company for 14 years. So, and I've got, a lot left in the tank, I feel like. So it's not like, it's very contradictory, but I do chalk it up to just the communication over the years, as far as like what injuries are and how to treat them and how to prevent them is so much better now than it used to be. It's also like, you look at NFL players, especially quarterbacks, right? You look at like Tom Brady, he was able to do what he did into his 40s, which had never been done before. And so just the shelf life, if you take care of yourself the right way and you do the right thing, you're going to be able to hang on a bit longer.
I hadn't thought about that at all, but it's such a good point, right? Like anyone that knows the CrossFit world, like the fact that you're doing the training obviously means that you're also doing the nutrition and the other stuff that gets talked about. And that goes such a long way. Like I'm a huge baseball fan, and that's another example where like now the athletes are doing all the like biohacking stuff and the recovery stuff. Whereas like, you see videos back in the day, baseball players used to go in after the games and, it's like cigarettes and beer. So, I hadn't thought about it that way, but that makes a lot of sense.
Yep. Same thing, man. Same thing. Yeah. Wrestlers just didn't know. I mean, the 80s, they'd put ice on it and call it a day. They'd fight through every injury. It didn't matter. And like, oh, we're in a lot of pain. We take a bunch of pills. We'll be fine. I mean, it's just how it was. Drink a bunch, take pills, uppers in the morning to go do it again. And that was just how they did it. And that's why the careers didn't last and the lives didn't last very long. So luckily we're smarter, we're better taken care of these days. And you don't see, those types of abuse issues nearly as often as you used to.
I want to ask a question. I don't know how to frame this right way, but it is interesting for me. Again, I've known you for a long time. I've always enjoyed every interaction we've ever had. You're like a super kind, super gracious, awesome dude. For sure.
Thank you.
But that's Colby Lopez, right? That's like my friend Colby, right? And then you have Seth Rollins, who is a professional WWE superstar. And I'm curious, like, and you and I have talked about this a little bit offline about like, when you go places, like there's like this, you got to kind of there's your character and there's your person. Like, how have you had to like learn how to navigate that over the last, 15 years? Because you're Seth Rollins, but you're also you're Colby Lopez, but you work as Seth Rollins. And I'm wondering for people who I'm trying to think of the takeaway exactly for other people. I just think it's a really interesting question because you're unique in that. Like,
yeah, it's a very strange thing because we're not like stage actors, we're not like screen actors, right? Or like if like Robert Downey Jr. is Robert Downey Jr., and he plays Iron Man, Tony Stark, but nobody really expects him to be Tony Stark when they meet him, right? Whereas like nobody, like if they go up to him, they're not going to go, "Hey, Tony," they're going to go, "Hey, Robert Downey Jr., can I have a picture?" And like for me, no one comes up to me and says, "Oh, Colby, hey, Colby," and if they do, it's like alarming. I'm like, "Oh, is that my mom? Am I in trouble? What's going on here?" And it almost is like in the old days, it would almost be like an insult if someone called you by your government name, like, "Oh, who do they think they are calling me by that name? Call me, me by Seth." But so they call me by more people know me by Seth than Colby by a wide margin. And so it's interesting, but thankfully they don't expect Seth Rollins, because Seth Rollins is like he's very much on the fringe of my real personality. I'm like super chill, like to just relax. I'm not terribly eccentric, like in my downtime. But Seth Rollins is a larger than life kind of version. Like like I said, he's just on the fringe of me. Like there's parts of me that connect with him, but at the end of the day, like I'm not that crazy. So luckily people don't expect that too much. Which is nice. Like they don't expect me to be going nuts all the time. They're cool to just meet and get a picture and have a handshake, maybe ask a question or something like that. But yeah, it's an interesting experience. I find that the advent of the cell phone and the camera in everybody's hand is made it tricky to get around doing things without being stopped, for pictures all the time. But it is what it is, and it's part of the gig. And in many ways, it's a very cool part of the gig because you get to meet people who are inspired by you. And I don't like that's crazy to me, right? Because often I don't feel like I'm a person that's like out, like I'm not out to inspire people in ways, I mean? I'm not thinking about that all the time. Like I'm not thinking that like Colby Lopez's dad, who's taking his family to the grocery store, is going to meet someone that he's inspired in some capacity. But to be able to be that for somebody, an inspiration to somebody, to like a light for somebody in whatever, way they see you, that's a really cool thing. I mean, and not everybody gets to have that experience. And so to be able to be an inspiration to another human being and provide them with some sort of joy is astonishing. And so it's always very cool to meet people who are appreciative and just excited to, say hi to Seth Rollins, not Colby. Nobody knows Colby. So it's a cool thing though.
Have you thought about any additional considerations to that dynamic as your daughter gets older, and either explaining to her why people call you something that maybe she doesn't call, or it's the only thing she'll know, so like she'll just kind of grow up getting it? I wonder if you've thought about it at all, and if anything is going to change, or if anything is something you want to get in front of as she gets older.
So we definitely talked about it because we don't really, like right now she doesn't really get it. She's just started to figure out like the other day we were at the airport or something, and somebody a little boy was asking for a picture, and like she thought she was invited into the picture. She thought, oh, they want to get a picture of me. But we try to keep like the photographs of her to like sort of a minimum. Like we try to keep that private, when we can. And so I just took the picture with the boy, but she got so upset that she wasn't asked to be in the photo. So as an aside, we were just like, oh, okay, here, you can take a picture. Let's take a picture with this guy. And so she was happy to just stand by this boy, and we took a picture. The kid was like, okay. But we needed a favor out of him. I had a favor for him. Now I needed a favor out of him. But yeah, like that stuff, we kind of just, I think we've taken it as we'll address it when it comes up sort of thing, like, she doesn't really watch the shows at all. She's like, doesn't care. Like, if you show her, oh, mom and dad is on TV, she just doesn't nothing. That could be, it makes no sense to her, and she hasn't computed that because we're on TV, other people know who we are, strangers know who we are. She doesn't know. She has like toys of us, doesn't register to her. She's not like, hey, look at my mama toy or look at my dada toy to her friends. Like she doesn't even play with them. Like they're just there. You know what I mean? She doesn't care at all. She'd much rather play with like, her Gabby Funhouse toy or whatever the kids are into these days. But yeah, it's one of those things where like we've talked about it, but I don't think we even know. We don't even know how to answer until we get the question, like we don't even know. We've just like, what's it going to be like when she figures this out kind of thing? Like, what's it going to be like when she sees that her parents are famous? Like she just doesn't know, you know what I mean? Even like, like the other day we were at this Moana premiere, and The Rock, we're there with The Rock, who's the biggest movie star in the world, and she has no clue. She just doesn't. It doesn't click. It'd be like if when I was around her age, 1990, right? It'd be like if my friends were just my parents were just friends with Tom Cruise.
Right.
They just like going to places with Tom Cruise and going to like that would. You know what I mean? My brain can't comprehend what that would be like for me. I wouldn't even know the difference at that age, but like, it's very interesting. It'd be interesting to see when it finally clicks for her and how she asks about it and how she feels about it. Cause I don't know if it's going to be a positive or negative thing. I don't know what it's going to be like for her.
Yeah, man, that's fascinating. I mean, Jay, how's it been for you? I mean, because you get that to an extent. You know, you've had the kids around at the CrossFit Games, and at the CrossFit Games, like everyone wants a picture with Jason.
That's true.
Yeah, I think to your point, Colby, like, dude, it's interesting. I think you answered that really well. By the way, like, hey, like when it comes up, like we'll navigate it. She doesn't really care. It's kind of what happened with us. Like, dude, my kids, both of my kids were on the podium with me at the CrossFit Games, and over the years, even now, right? In general, if I go to the airport, I'll have like one person, two people come up and say hi. In general, at airports, not necessarily locally as much, but anytime we travel, people will come up and they'll want to have a conversation. Like not hundreds of people, right? Like you have probably way more, but there will be a few people. And so it does bring up this question, like, dude, we're at the airport. There's like some people coming up, and it's just kind of been known. And like one of the things I've tried to do is like never make it a big deal and always say yes. I always say yes to people because I think that's the right thing to do because, I think that's important. But also like I never make it a big deal. So I never like have a conversation or take a picture and then be like, we don't even talk about it again. We just keep moving. And it just has become a part of like the culture where like, hey, dad does some stuff that kind of has, to your point, like some awareness from people. He says hi to people, he connects them, and then we move on. And I think the important thing there is like not making it about, hey, I'm popular, look at me. It's that, hey, this is part of like what I do. I want to support this guy because this is going to be meaningful to them. And I want to be able to do that. And then after that, we just don't talk about it. That's the way we've done it. We don't draw attention to it because it's not important. Meaning it's important for the people and it's important for me because I want to be able to give back. But it's not important to who I am as a dad, as a husband. It's not important to like my relationship with my kids. You know what I'm saying? Like it's
yeah. Have they even asked? Have they even said, why did that man come up to you?
Yeah, I mean, now that they're 13 and 10, I mean, it's like, of course. I mean, they early on they started asking some of those questions, like when they were like 6 and whatever. Now they just totally get it. It's just easy, and it's just like a part of like. It's just a part of what I do for work, right? But I think the takeaway that I've tried to impart in the kids is that I have a duty that if I'm going to go out there and put out content and try and inspire and share my life with people, that, if we can make someone's day by taking a picture or having a conversation or shaking somebody's hand, then I need to be able to do that. That's important to me to always say yes to that. Yeah. And if I'm not in a position to do that at the time, then I don't even want to put myself out there like that. You know what I'm saying? Like if you're at a WWE event and you choose not to talk to anybody at all, or maybe that's not the best example, but like if you want private time, just trying to keep yourself away from the crowd. But as soon as you're out there, you want to make sure you're able to talk to people, because I think that's also important for the kids, at least. Like, if you have 3 people come up to you at an airport, it's important for them to see that you have the humility to talk to them, engage with them. I think that's important. So that's what we try to do.
Nice.
But then again, I'm not having hundreds of people like you, dude. I'm not having like signs with my face on it out in front of it's totally different. I'm saying for me, this works, but I'm not Seth Rollins.
I mean, it's different sometimes. Like if you're, at an airport, it's very seldom. People are just so like, wow, I can't believe we're at a grocery store or something. It's a quick one. When it gets to a point where when you're in a situation where if you stop, it becomes a mob. Then you have to kind of be quick about it or move through. You have to start to make decisions for your safety. Like the last thing I want is my family to be surrounded by people like kind of grabbing or with their phones just doing this type of stuff. You gotta understand when the level of danger starts to get to an uncomfortable position. I don't want to put my family in that situation. So like I said, if we're out and about and it's like a store, a movie theater, we'll get a handful of people here and there. And it's just very, one of these or a handshake.
Yeah.
Usually if they see we're with our kid, it's usually just man, you guys are awesome. Like something like that. And that's great. I love that. You can do that all day long. But like I said, if the setting is wrong, and all hell has potential to break loose, you gotta cut and go.
Yeah, man. That's interesting though. But I think that, like you said, you're gonna play it like even like how we started this podcast. Like, dude, like it's just communication. It's being aware. Like with your daughter as she gets older, like you'll figure out where that fits. Like. Yep. But it's just a part of it's a part of your life, and so you have to work to navigate it. And like for me, again, there's levels to this, right? I can only imagine what it's like to not be able to, I don't know, walk anywhere or whatever. But for me, that's the way we've handled it with the kids. But dude, I want to ask though, with with back to the some of the fitness stuff. How have you evolved? So you're deep in CrossFit. How has bodybuilding came into play with that? What role has that played for you? Because have you transitioned a little bit more to more like isolation, hypertrophy type training?
Yeah, I started moving back into it mostly just to change it up again. Honestly, I was just like been doing CrossFit for so long, and aesthetics were good. I wasn't in any way like having issues with that. I was just kind of like finding that things were starting to hurt a little bit. I was getting a little, one thing with the CrossFit training is like, I don't want to say reckless. Reckless isn't the right word, but like there's a little more kind of laxity with training when it's CrossFit, right? So there's a lot more that because the danger, especially when you do high level movements, like a muscle up that's a high level skill, right? And even if I've done it a million times and I'm pretty efficient at them, there's just more that can go wrong, And I was getting to the point where in my training, like I wanted as little to go wrong as possible. And so I started it even when I'd do well for a while, I'd feel good, have some great training sessions, just, things would go wrong when I was doing everything exactly the same as I always would. And I'm kind of like, I didn't want that feeling. I didn't want that risk. So basically it was me like kind of pulling back a little bit, taking a little bit of the risk out of my training. And I had stopped, years ago, probably 3 or 4 years ago, I'd stopped really like pushing the envelope as far as like, okay, how much can I make my heart jump out of my chest during this?
Yeah.
Like
no more of the bacon sizzle when you're done. You're like laying in the pool of sweat. Yeah.
I'd gotten to the point. I'd done that. I'm good. And I could just, I wasn't trying to PR my snatch anymore, trying to get the heaviest deadlift I could, wasn't advantageous for training anymore, for my body anymore. So I just started to pull back on those things a little bit. And then eventually I was like, you know what? Let's just try something new. Let's just dive back into some hypertrophy and some bodybuilding, get a trainer, like dial in nutrition, like really well, like really start counting and just see what happens. And so I've been doing that like for maybe a few months now. And I've enjoyed it. It's a little more boring than your standard CrossFit session. So I'll pop in a WOD every now and then just to keep myself like feeling good, but like doing steady state cardio and bodybuilding it's a boring week of training sometimes. So, but I enjoy it in the sense that it provides some new challenges, right? Just different things and just feeling my body in a different way as I'm getting a little bit older. 38, be 39 next year. So, I put a lot of miles on this thing over the last 20 years in my industry, and to be able to feel good after training too, where I'm not like just deathly sore all the time, to be able to play with this little savage that's running around here, going a mile a minute all day long. That's important as well. So those are all kind of the things that shifted me back over to doing some more standard training, if you will, sort of, pressing and pulling and at a nice slow pace. So yeah, it's a work in progress. I'm not saying it's going to be permanent. I might dip back into the CrossFit game at some point, but just wanted to try it out and see how my body responded and if it was something, a direction that I wanted to go in the future.
Mm.
Yeah, dude, I love it, man. I love
Gabe
it.
loves the hypertrophy training.
Yeah.
We just got done doing a high rocks, which is basically run a long distance, do like a station for an hour. And we just got done doing this. This was like very recent. And it's cool, man. You run 1,000 meters, then you do like, a sled push. You do 1,000 meters and you do wall balls. You do 1,000 meters, you do a farmer's carry. And it's kind of like CrossFit-ish, but with more running. Yeah. But it reduces down some of the complexity, right? So you're not doing, I think what you alluded to, and I agree with you, is like in CrossFit, you're trying to get as much work done in as little time possible, which is why it's so effective. But with that, there could be at times some like degraded form because you're trying to go for max reps of like clean and jerks as an example. Yep. And I'm at a similar point now in my journey where like, dude, I want to throttle my workouts. I love it, but not with like highly complex skills. It's just not where I'm at on my journey, So yeah, it sounds like you and I and Gabe, we're all kind of on the same. It's interesting how the path kind of for many people leads the same direction, where I want to be able to show up for my family. I want to be able to provide experience. I want to be able to do those things with them. And like, if you can't keep up with your daughter because you're too sore or you're hurt, that's not in alignment with where you want to go on your training. You know, I think that's an important takeaway. Yeah.
100%, man. I mean, music to my ears, but it's true for a lot of people. And I think that a big piece of it too is that like you can make 80% of your progress with the high intensity, but there's a point where you're going to start getting kind of diminishing returns. Like, I mean, you hit the nail on the head with like, how much heavier do I really need my deadlift to be? How much heavier do I need my, squat snatch to be? And what benefit are you getting from the amount of work and injury risk that comes from the work that it would require? And Jason, this applies to you too. Like, you could probably now, if you absolutely needed to, maybe put 5-10 pounds on your back squat or a snatch, maybe, but like, what would you have to sacrifice to get there, and how much injury risk would be involved versus just like maintaining and feeling good? And Seth, what you said, like finishing a training session and feeling better than when you started it, not sore or, like on a different planet because you just did Fran. I think there's something to that, especially once you have kids, because you don't have the luxury to, have an hour to decompress after a workout. You got to go sometimes right from your workout to, playing whatever game they want to play.
Yeah. It's really just, I think it boils down to just a shift in priorities, because when you're an athlete and you're training for that, and then that 5 pounds in your PR could be make or break, you know what I mean? That's the difference. And especially if there's money on the line or sponsorships or whatever, you just never know. Like that those incremental jumps are huge, and that's your priority, and that's got to be your priority because that's what you're pushing for, and that's where you, like Jason said, that's where he was at in his journey. But if that's where you're at in your journey, and I've been there, that's where I was at in my journey, where those numbers mattered to me, and being able to go faster and harder and heavier, that was an important part of who I was. And that's how I felt better every day, emotionally and physically. But as the journeys progress, things change and your priorities shift, and you got to have your fitness align with your priorities in life, right? So when your fitness aligns with your priorities in life, you're going to be able to get, I think, more joy out of your workout, but you're also going to be able to put more joy back into wherever your main priority is. And, for me, it is my family. It is my wife, it is my kid, and to make sure that, like you said, you're there for them and you're present for them, and you're not just, look, even if you how many days have you ruined, at least for me, when you have a workout that didn't meet your expectations because you're so hyper focused on competing, and you're like, if I don't hit these numbers, I'm going to fall behind. And then you're mentally jacked up for a few hours after, or sometimes days, until you get back in the gym and you're able to get that back. And that affects everything. That's spider webs, and that affects your relationships throughout the rest of the day because you're so screwed up mentally from not being able to complete this one little thing. And that's just, like I said, it's just a realignment of priorities, 100%. And that's where I'm at in my fitness journey, my work journey, my personal journey. It's all about where are my priorities and how do they all synergize to kind of make this the best path for me.
Seth, I love everything you just said, man. It's music to my ears, and it's exactly what we talk about on this podcast all the time. I do want to kind of finish up with a question for you. It took you many, many years to get your shot, to get your first shot. I mean, your championship shot. And I imagine you had this vision growing up, right? You wanted to get that shot. And for people who want their shot is something not like yours. Your shot was hey, a shot at the championship belt, a shot at this. Maybe for other people, their shot is name the thing in their career or whatever. How did you stay dedicated to staying the course when for so many years? What did it take? You know what I mean? That's what it is. What did it take? Because it took you years.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a very stubborn individual. Very, very stubborn. So, I mean, this is it's a super layered question because there's so many things that come to my mind. One, I think first and foremost, the thing that I was trying to get my shot at, if we're going to use that sort of reference, I loved it. I had an extreme passion for it. It wasn't just this thing that I fell into. I loved it. I I put everything I had into it. So I think having a passion for the thing that you're pursuing, whatever that is in life, and not everybody has that. Not everybody can just like find this passion. It doesn't just appear to them. But if you can find something in your, dealings, however you get to where you're at, that you're like, oh man, I really like this thing that I'm doing, or this thing that I've fallen into, like pursue that passion, pursue it, because you just don't know where it might take you. So I find that if you have passion for something in your life, do everything you can to pursue it. I think that's a big one. Secondly, I was stubborn, so stubborn that I hated losing. I mean, I hated losing in video games. I hated losing in races. I hated that, and I took that mindset um, of of losing and not liking that feeling, and it made me work harder. On top of that, people who looked at my dream as a pipe dream, so the haters, if you will, I always embraced that because it made me feel like I had something to prove. But on top of that, again, this is layered, I had a balance of people who did believe in me, people who were close to me, like my close friends and my family, who did believe in me. They did believe in what I could accomplish. And that balance, having the people on the other side to make me go, oh man, I want to prove you wrong. On this side, having other people to help lift me up when I struggled, or when I, was kind of strayed from the path or whatever it may be, to have people that believed in me, that helped as well. So it's really that kind of this tour de force of circumstances. But I think it is all fueled by the passion to pursue something that made me feel alive, in a way that nothing else did. And I did whatever I could to put myself in a position to find success in that passion. And if that passion had disappeared, then I don't think I would have been able to achieve even a modicum of the success that I've been able to in my chosen field. I was just able to take that passion and continue to build upon it. And for me, that was the number one thing. A lot of help along the way. Didn't do anything alone. But for sure, it sounds silly, but yeah, that was my vision, and I just kept it. And no matter what, I pushed and pushed and pushed because I loved it. Even if I was going to fail, I loved it. I would have still done it because I loved it.
That's the mic drop right there.
That's it. Well, Seth, we want to be conscious of your time, man. I know you got to get back to the family. I'm sure you're going to be doing a lot of everything. But I just always really enjoy, talking to you. And I just want to make sure that every listener realizes, like, you are exactly who you are, man. Like, dude, like you're that guy, and you haven't allowed this fame and success to change who you are. And I mean, cause I've seen over the last 10 years. So I just want to say thanks for being you. Thanks for, leading. And man, I'm glad you got to go see Moana. I'm going to have to wait until it comes out. I'm going to have to go check that out myself. I'm sure the best place is the best place. Just, your Instagram has all the links to everything. And I mean, dude, I know you got a coffee shop, and I mean, I definitely want to get into coffee shop, but that'll be for another time we get together. We'll go celebrate with some light roast or something.
We'll do part 2. Yeah. We'll talk more about the businesses. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you guys for having me. I appreciate it. Head to the Instagram, WW Rollins, or on X, WW Rollins, wherever you want to go. And it's, whatever you need is there, but I don't have anything huge to promote today. Just wanted to come on and chat with you guys. And it's been a while since we got to talk, Jay. So it's cool to even do it this way.
Hell yeah. Well, hey, we appreciate you guys for checking out the episode. Make sure to go back, check out all the other episodes of the Jason Khalipa Podcast. Also, Gabe and I have our solo episodes. Big shout out to Seth Rollins for joining us today, and keep training hard.